They said, "At your age, what do you need privacy for?" As if being old meant I stopped being human. First it was the bathroom door. Then the bedroom. Then every boundary I ever drew. So I did the one thing they never saw coming. Because if I'm not allowed space in my own home, then they don't deserve to call it theirs. You know, there's a certain quiet humiliation that comes with having to knock on your own bedroom wall, just to ask if you can be left alone. I'm 75. My name is Lorraine. I've lived a full life, raised a daughter on my own, paid off a mortgage on a single salary, baked casseroles for funerals and birthdays, and put bandages on more scraped knees than I can count. I didn't expect a medal. I didn't even expect a thank you. But I sure as hell didn't expect this. It started off small. Isn't that always the way? A few years ago, my daughter Melanie offered to have me move in. She said, "It'll be better, Mom. You won't be alone. You'll have family around." And for a moment that sounded nice. After all, the house was big, and I'd helped her buy it. She didn't like hearing that part. But it's true, the down payment came from my late husband's pension and the equity in my old home, but I signed the deed over to her when she insisted. Said it made things simpler. Simpler for who? At first, she gave me the guest room upstairs, said it was quieter for me, but that room was right off the hallway. Right where the kids stomped, and her husband blasted video games. Then one day, I came back from a walk and found the lock on my bedroom door was gone. "Oh, we took it off," Melanie said, all nonchalant over her coffee. "The kids were playing with it. Don't want anyone getting stuck. But I use that lock," I replied, trying to keep my voice even. "That's my room." Her eyes didn't even flicker. "You don't really need it though, right? It's not like you're hiding anything." It wasn't a question. I didn't argue. Not then, not yet. I just sat on the bed that night, staring at the bare knob, feeling the weight of invisibility settle on my chest, like dust no one bothered to clean. I had raised her to be kind, to respect others, and now my grown daughter was treating me like a piece of furniture that could be moved around, rearranged, or left behind. A few weeks later, the bathroom door disappeared. No joke, gone, just hinges and drywall. I nearly had a panic attack. "Construction," her husband Craig muttered from behind his newspaper when I pointed it out. "We're updating the house. Open concept is in." Open concept for a bathroom. It's funny how absurdity masks cruelty. That's the thing with Melanie and Craig. They don't yell, they don't scream, they just chip away at you quietly, until you forget what standing upright even felt like. One night, I was brushing my teeth with the doorless bathroom facing the living room, where Craig was lounging with a beer. He didn't even flinch as I stood there, frozen, toothbrush halfway to my mouth. I didn't say anything. I just turned off the light and went to bed. But something in me started to coil tight like a thread pulled too far. A warning bell in my chest that told me, this isn't love. This isn't family. This is erasure. They started walking into my room without knocking. My granddaughter, Madison, 12 years old and already full of that flippant teenage cruelty, would waltz in, grab my chargers or lotions, and roll her eyes when I said, "Please ask before taking things." "But this house is ours," she said once, tossing her hair. "You just live here." That night, I cried. Not the messy, loud sobs that come with fresh heartbreak, but the quiet kind. The kind that rolls down your cheek at 2 a.m. while you're trying not to make a sound. It wasn't until the final door came off that something inside me snapped. It was my closet door. No explanation, no warning, just gone. "Too many doors make the room feel cramped," Melanie said when I confronted her. And something in me, something I didn't even know was still alive, stood up. I nodded. I said nothing. I smiled even. But my mind started counting. I counted every check I wrote when she was younger, Every time I picked up her slack when she couldn't pay her bills. I counted the years I spent sacrificing vacations I never took, dresses I never bought, so she could have new shoes in summer camp. I counted the dollars from the house I sold, the house I built with her father, that went into this house, and I remembered something she didn't. My name may not be on the current deed, but the title history, oh, it told a different story. That night, I dug through my old fireproof box. It had followed me for decades, moving from house to house, tucked in closets and safes. Inside it were documents, copies of the original deed, the transfer forms, the tax payments I made, a folder marked trust, and at the bottom my trump card, a clause in the co-ownership agreement I insisted on back then, just in case. Craig thought he was smart. Melanie thought I was forgetful, but I was just patient. You see, the house wasn't fully hers, not legal. I still had retained what's called reversionary interest, a little piece of law most people forget about. The clause said if I vacated under duress, or if the property became unsafe or unsuitable for my living, I could initiate a reversion. And you bet I had documentation, photos, letters, emails, texts. I had been quiet, but I had been watching. The next morning I began to pack, not out of fear but for documentation. I photographed the missing door, recorded Craig's loud comments about how I should be grateful not to be in a home somewhere. I even got Madison on video, barging in while I changed, and laughing like it was funny. I emailed everything to a lawyer, not just any lawyer, my late husband's old friend, a man I hadn't spoken to in years, but who still owed me a favor and had a healthy respect for what my husband and I had built. When I finally told Melanie I was leaving, she smiled smugly. See, I knew you'd come around. Less stress for everyone. I smiled right back. You're right, much less stress. As I carried my final box down the stairs, Craig passed me and muttered, "Don't let the door hit you." Oh wait, you don't have one. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Because the next time they heard from me, it would be via certified mail, and what I had in store was far more final than any slammed door. When I leave Melanie's house, I don't look back. I carry the last cardboard box to my car, close the trunk, and slide into the driver's seat. My hands tremble just a little as I start the ignition. But not from sadness, not anymore. No, this shaking is from adrenaline. From the slow, steady thrill of finally reclaiming something I hadn't felt in years. Control. I drive straight to a quiet little rental I found weeks ago. A 2-bedroom cottage just outside of town, tucked behind a grove of maple trees. It's peaceful. It's mine. And more importantly, it has a solid oak door with a lock I bought myself. The landlord was hesitant about renting to someone my age, until I handed him a year's rent in full, cash. Let them call me just a babysitter. Let them call me dead weight. Let them call me anything they want. From this point on, they'll be calling me from outside the house. That night, I sit at the small kitchen table, eating a hot bowl of soup, and reading over the legal paperwork. My husband's old friend Richard came through for me. He may be retired, but his mind is sharp and his sense of justice sharper. He told me on the phone, "Lorraine, they may have underestimated you, but I haven't forgotten what you're capable of." Those words held me like a warm coat in winter. We reviewed everything, the deed history, the trust agreement, and the reversionary clause that gave me the right to reclaim the house in case of abuse or undue duress. Richard said, "It's a little-known clause, but it's enforceable, especially with this much documentation." I'd given him photos of the missing doors, notes about every time they humiliated me, a record of who paid for what, and even screenshots of Melanie's text, saying, "You're lucky we let you stay here." Lucky, that word stayed with me. Lucky as if I hadn't put a roof over her head when she was 5 and her father was working 14-hour days at the steel mill. Lucky as if I hadn't given up my retirement to help with that down payment. Lucky as if the very walls of that house hadn't been built on the sacrifices I made every single year she was growing up. Well, here's the thing about luck. It turns, within 2 weeks. The paperwork is ready. A formal notice to reclaim partial ownership under the reversion clause, and a motion to initiate co-occupant reevaluation. In simple terms, I'm taking back my rights, and she can either settle with me quietly or face litigation. I send it by certified mail, with a copy emailed to Melanie and another delivered to Craig's workplace. Petty, maybe, but strategic, absolutely. The reaction is immediate. It's 10:47 a.m. on a Wednesday when my phone rings. Melanie. I watch the screen for a moment, sipping my tea. Then I answer. Hello, sweetheart. There's no warmth in her voice. Mom, what is this legal notice you sent us? I think it's pretty self-explanatory, I say calmly. I'm exercising my rights to the house. She lets out a sharp breath. You're trying to take the house. I'm reclaiming what I already own. You know as well as I do that the original deed included me as co-owner, and the trust document never dissolved that. You chose to forget it. I didn't. But you left, voluntarily, with the bathroom exposed to the living room and not a single door to my name. That's not voluntary, Melanie. That's eviction wrapped in a smile. For a long moment there's silence on the line. Then she tries a different tactic. You're really going to humiliate us like this? What are the neighbors going to think? That makes me laugh, a full bitter laugh I hadn't felt in months. Oh honey, I say, the neighbors already think I'm dead. You never invited me to a single barbecue. She hangs up. I spend the next few days in peace. I knit. I read. I go on walks. But I also stay sharp, keeping an eye on the legal calendar Richard provided me. Melanie and Craig have 15 business days to respond before the process accelerates. And respond they do. One afternoon, a knock comes at the rental door. I peek through the curtain and see Craig standing there in a blazer and jeans, trying to look casual. I open the door but don't invite him in. Hey, he says, rubbing the back of his neck. Can we talk? I fold my arms. Talking is free. Go ahead. He shifts uncomfortably. Look, this whole lawsuit thing. It's extreme. I mean, we didn't think it'd get this far. No, I reply. You didn't think I would get this far. You thought I'd roll over and disappear. He tries a chuckle. Come on, Lorraine. It's not like we didn't appreciate what you did. I tilt my head. Then why you remove every door I had? He blinks. It wasn't meant to be. Look, Melanie's under a lot of stress. The kids, I cut him off. Do not blame your behavior on your children. There's a long silence. Then his tone shifts, gets sharper. If this goes to court, it's going to look ugly for everyone. Then settle. His eyebrows rise. You're actually serious. Dead serious. He leaves that day with his jaw tight and his pride wounded. But I feel lighter. That weekend, Melanie sends a text. Not a call, not a visit. A text. Fine. What do you want? I stare at the screen for a moment. Then I type my reply. Half the house or full control. Your choice. She doesn't respond. But Richard receives a call from their lawyer the next morning, and the negotiations begin. They offer me $20,000 to walk away and sign a quiet agreement. I refuse. They offer $40,000. I laugh. You don't understand, I tell Melanie when she tries to call again. It's not about the money. It's about the dignity. You're being vindictive, she hisses. No, I'm being precise. By the time the 2-week deadline hits, they fold. Quietly, reluctantly, Melanie agrees to transfer full ownership of the house back to me in exchange for a buyout that's far less than what I originally gave them. Richard drafts the agreement. I pay them with the inheritance money my mother left me. A poetic twist if there ever was one. And just like that, the house is mine again. All mine. The first thing I do after the house is legally mine again, I change the law. Not out of spite. No. I do it out of necessity, out of wisdom. I know, Melanie. And I know Craig. Their type doesn't accept change quietly. They accept it with noise, slammed doors and crocodile tears at just the right volume to sway sympathy from neighbors who weren't there to witness a thing. So I change the locks. I install a new deadbolt, stronger than before. I reprogram the garage door, and then for good measure I hang a new sign on the gate. Private property. No trespassing. It's not for the public, it's for them, for the ones who thought I'd never fight back. The house smells different now. I think I'd forgotten what clean air smelled like. Air without tension. Air not heavy with judgment. I walk from room to room, barefoot on polished floor. My steps echo. Because I took back more than the house. I took back the silence they used to drown me out. The living room, mine. The couch, replaced. The hallway, I've rehung the doors. All of them. Solid, beautiful doors with polished brass knobs and hinges that close without a sound. And that bathroom door? That door is now the sturdiest one in the house. It's not just about privacy. It's about boundaries. About teaching a grown daughter something she never quite understood. I'm not a fixture in her life. I'm a person. A few days after the transfer is finalized, I get a call from my neighbor Kathy. Sweet woman. She's lived next door since her boys were in diapers. Lorraine, she says. I saw the moving truck leave. Did Melanie move out? She did, I say with a smile in my voice. There's a pause. Then Kathy's voice softens. Good. Just that. One word. She saw more than she let on. I spend the next few weeks reclaiming the house room by room. I paint. I refinish the old dining table. I buy new linen. I even hang up the cross-stitched quote I made years ago. The one Melanie used to roll her eyes at. It reads, "What you allow is what will continue." I hang it by the front door. One Saturday afternoon, as I'm trimming the hedges, a familiar car pulls up to the curb. Craig steps out first. Then Melanie. She's holding a box, not a big one. Not heavy. I straighten up, rest the trimmers on my hip, and wait. Melanie approaches the gate, but doesn't enter. I came to get some of my things, she says. They should already be in storage, I reply. You were paid to vacate. Legally, there's nothing left for you here. She holds up the box. This is yours. Thought you might want it. I nod once. Leave it on the porch. She walks slowly, her eyes scanning the garden, the freshly cleaned siding, the new curtains I hung in the window. Craig stays by the car, arms crossed. I can feel his resentment from 30 feet away. Melanie sets the box down on the porch steps and turns to look at me. I don't get it, she says quietly. Why'd you go this far? I take a breath, then walk a little closer. Because you took away my privacy, and then tried to shame me for needing it. You told me I was lucky to live here when all I ever did was give you everything I had. I didn't mean it like that. But you said it like that, I reply, steady. And you acted like that. And your children watched you do it. Melanie blinks. Her mouth opens then closes. Good. Let the silence do its work. Do you ever plan on speaking to me again? She asks. I shrug. Do you ever plan on apologizing? She doesn't answer. Instead, she walks back to the car without another word. Craig opens her door for her like this is some tragic play they're starring in. They drive off, and I let out the breath I didn't know I was holding. Later, I open the box. It's filled with odds and ends. An old recipe book I made years ago, a few trinkets from my sewing room, a photograph of my husband holding Melanie when she was a baby. I keep the photo. The rest, I donate. One evening, I get a letter in the mail. No return address. But I know Melanie's handwriting. It's 3 pages long, a mixture of guilt and excuses, of memories, rewritten, and motives, reimagined. She says she was just trying to create space in the house. She says I misunderstood the situation. She says she never meant to make me feel unwelcome, but the thing is, she did make me feel unwelcome, over and over again, and I don't need to carry that weight anymore. I tuck the letter in a drawer, not out of sentiment, but as a reminder that self-respect doesn't begin with what people give you. It begins with what you stop allowing. The next morning, I get a call from an unfamiliar number. I almost don't pick up, but something tells me to. "Mrs. Caldwell?" the voice says. It's a young woman, kind voice. "My name is Laura. I work for the regional magazine Hearth and Home. We're doing a piece on elder empowerment and property rights, and someone referred us to you." I pause. "To me?" "Yes, ma'am," she says brightly. "We'd love to feature your story if you're willing. Your stand has been inspiring." For a moment I just sit there. Then I smile. "Well," I say, "I suppose I do have a few things to say." The young journalist's name is Laura, and she shows up on my porch the next Saturday morning with a notebook in her hand and nervous excitement in her eyes. She can't be more than 25, with a bobbed haircut and oversized glasses that slip down her nose every few minutes. But her questions are sharp, polite, but sharp. "So," she says, sitting across from me at my freshly cleaned kitchen table, "what was the breaking point for you?" I stir a spoon of honey into my tea and give her a small smile. "When they took off the bathroom door," I say simply. She blinks. "Wait, literally?" "Literally," I nod. "Because according to my daughter, I didn't need privacy anymore." "You're old," she told me. "You don't need to shut yourself away." Laura's face twists with disbelief. She scribbles something into her notebook. "That must have been," she begins, searching for the right word. "Dehumanizing," I offer. "And insulting. And final." She nods. I can see it in her eyes. She's imagining her own mother or grandmother in that position. She gets it. That afternoon, Laura stays longer than I expect. She asks questions most people don't bother with. "What made you stay quiet for so long? What made you finally draw the line? What would you say to other women your age going through something similar?" At one point she stops writing and looks up. "You know, Mrs. Caldwell, this isn't just a story. This is a reckoning." That word stays with me long after she's gone. Reckoning. It's not a word I ever associated with myself. I'm not some crusader, not someone who goes looking for fights, but when they took my privacy, my comfort, and my voice, they handed me something else in return. A resolve I didn't know I still had. And now, I plan to use. A week after the interview, the article goes live. The headline reads, "Elderly woman reclaims her home," and her voice in stunning turnaround. There's a photo of me standing proudly in front of the house, arms crossed, a soft smile on my lip. The light hits the new front door, just right, highlighting the brass knob I installed myself. I scroll through the comments, not something I usually do, but curiosity wins. "Powerful story. Reminds me of my own grandmother. Respect to her for not staying silent." For the first time in years, I feel seen. Not tolerated, not dismissed. Seen. And then, the phone rings again, but this time, it's Melanie. I stare at the screen, debating. Finally, I answer. "Hello? I saw the article," she says without preamble. I wait. "I didn't know you were going to go public with everything." "I didn't think you'd care," I reply. "That's not fair." Neither was ripping a door off its hinges. There's a long pause. Then quietly, "You embarrassed me." That makes me laugh. Really laugh. A sharp, short sound that echoes in my chest. "You're embarrassed?" I say. "Melanie? You made me feel invisible in my own home. You let your husband call me dead weight. You told your children I was just old-fashioned. You even told the neighbors I was lucky to be under your roof, as if I hadn't bought it myself. I didn't mean for it to come off like that. Then maybe you should have listened before it came to this. Another silence. Then, can we meet? No, I say. Calm and clear. You can write, you can reflect, you can even apologize, but you don't get my time. Not until you earn back my trust. She hangs up, and for the first time since this whole mess began, I feel peace. The next day, I get a knock on the door. It's the mail carrier, handing me a large envelope. Inside is a formal invitation to speak at a local senior advocacy event. They want me to be their keynote. I blink, holding the card like it's something fragile. Me? Speaking? I've never done anything like that in my life, but I also never imagined reclaiming my house either. So I write back, yes. I spend the next week preparing notes, not a full speech, just thoughts, stories, memories, lesson. I practice in front of the mirror, hands shaking, voice cracking, but I keep going. On the night of the event, I wear my lavender cardigan, the one I wore the day the deed was signed back in my name, a symbol of reclamation. The community center is packed, rows of chairs, a small podium, a warm spotlight. When I step up to speak, I take a breath and begin the only way I know how. My daughter said I didn't need privacy, so I took the doors and the deed. Laughter ripples through the crowd, then silence, then nods. I tell them everything. Not to shame my daughter, but to warn others, to empower them, to remind them they are not a burden, not invisible, not done. When I finish, the applause is thunderous, and somewhere in the back row I spot a face I didn't expect. Craig. Not Melanie, just him. He doesn't clap. He doesn't stand. He just looks. And for the first time ever, I see it. Not arrogance, not dominance, regret, but it's too late for him. This was never about revenge. It was about restoration. I never expected a movement to grow from a door, but that's exactly what happened. The night after I speak at the senior advocacy event, my inbox overflows. Messages from older women across the country, some from small towns, some from big cities, all saying the same thing in different words. This happened to me too. I thought I was alone. Thank you for speaking up. One message reads, my daughter-in-law controls everything in our home, even my meals. I haven't been allowed to decorate my own room. After reading your story, I finally told her no. Thank you. Another woman, 82, tells me she started sleeping with a chair propped against her bedroom door because her son refuses to fix the lock. I cry reading these emails, not out of sadness, but out of fury, out of kinship, out of hope. So I write back, every one of them. No copy-paste, no pre-written reply, just me, responding like I'm writing to an old friend, because that's what they feel like, every one of them holding a piece of my past, my pain, and now my fight. It isn't long before a national podcast reaches out. We'd love to feature your story, the host said. We want to talk about elder dignity and family control. I hesitate. I'm not a public speaker. I'm just a woman who wanted her door back. But that's the thing, isn't it? Sometimes all it takes is one voice to open 1,000 doors. So I say yes. They fly me out to New York. First time I've been on a plane in 20 years. I wear the same lavender cardigan. I need the grounding. The studio is sleek, modern, glass walls, buzzing lights, microphones on long arms like mechanical snakes. But the moment I sit down and they say, we're live in 3, 2, 1, I forget the fear. I remember the bathroom with no door, the cold eyes of my daughter saying, you don't need privacy. The smirk on Craig's face when I asked for a doorknob, and the strength that came after. I tell it all, in plain English. No drama, no shouting, just the truth. And people listen, really listen. By the next day, the episode is trending. Thousands of shares, even local lawmakers retweeting it with captions like, "We need to talk about elder respect in this country." I smile as I sip my coffee and scroll through the responses. But the real surprise comes 3 days later. There's a knock at my front door. I open it to find Melanie. Her eyes are red. Not puffy, not crocodile tears. Red. Real. She's holding something. A shoebox. "May I come in?" she asks. I pause, not out of malice, out of caution. Finally, I step aside. She walks in slowly, looking at the house like it's a museum of someone she used to know. The furniture's rearranged. The walls are repainted. The silence feels full, not empty. "I barely recognized it," she whispers. "You wouldn't," I reply. "You never really looked when you lived here." She nods, doesn't argue. That's a start. She sets the box on the table and opens it. Inside, there are dozens of old photographs. Me, holding baby Melanie in a rocking chair. Me at her graduation. Me, baking with her kids. All of them I thought were gone. Taken, discarded. Lost in the mess of eviction. "I kept them," she says. "Craig didn't want them. Said we didn't need all that sentimental junk. But I couldn't throw them away." She pulls out a picture of me in my old kitchen. Flour dusting my apron. Laughing. "You always looked happiest here," she says. I take the photo gently. My hands tremble. And then she does something I didn't see coming. She reaches into her coat pocket and pulls out a small envelope. "I had these drawn up," she says. "They're apology letters. One for you, one for the advocacy group, one for the publication that ran your story." I blink, not because of what she's saying, but because of how she's saying it. There's no edge. No condescension. Just a daughter trying to find her way back. "Why now?" I ask. "Because for the first time," she says, "I realized I was acting like Craig. That name sits between us like a dead thing. He's angry," she continues. "Thinks I betrayed him, says you humiliated him." I raise an eyebrow. "Did I?" She shrugs. "If you did, he earned it." And then she's quiet. For a long time. When she finally speaks again, her voice is thin. "You know, when you left, the kids kept asking why. I told them you were taking a break, but now they know. They saw the article. They heard the podcast. They're proud of you." My throat tightens. I never expected to hear that word, proud, from Melanie, let alone from her kids. And then she says it. "I want to make things right. If you'll let me." I take a deep breath. "I believe you," I say. "But it's gonna take time." "I know," she nods. "I'll wait." She leaves the box of photos, hugs me softly, more apology than affection, and walks out the door. When it closes behind her, I sit down, cradle the photo of me and baby Melanie, and cry. Not from sadness, not even from regret, just from release. That night, I pull out my journal and write a new entry. "Today, my daughter brought me memories instead of excuses." It may be the first honest thing she's given me in years. I tuck the photo into the page and close the book. I don't know what tomorrow brings, but for the first time in a long time, I know who holds the pen. Forgiveness isn't a straight line. It's more like patchwork. Bits of truth stitched together with time. After Melanie visits and leaves the photo box behind, I don't call her. I don't rush to rebuild anything. I let the days pass, let the silence settle, and surprisingly, I don't feel lonely. My home feels like mine again. My lavender cardigan hangs by the door. The doors are all reinstalled, solid wood, polished knobs, smooth hinges. I walk through each room like I'm reclaiming a kingdom. And I am, because even if nobody else saw me as queen of this home, I do now. But still, Melanie tries. She sends text, not long ones. Not apologies, just check-ins. Saw your video got 300,000 views. Proud of you, Mom. Kids want to visit. Only if you're ready. Thinking of you. Hope the hydrangeas are still blooming. And little by little, I soften. Not because I owe her grace, but because I've earned the strength to offer it. One Sunday I invite them all for lunch. No Craig. That was my one condition, and Melanie agreed before I could finish the sentence. So that's how I find myself in the kitchen again. Baking rosemary bread, grilling chicken, and setting the table for 4 instead of 1. It feels like muscle memory, but different. Because this time, I'm not hosting out of obligation. I'm not cooking to prove I belong. This time, I'm just home. There's a knock on the door. I open it to see Melanie. Her son Tyler, 8 years old. Shaggy hair, bright eyes. And daughter Sophie, 10, tall for her age, always holding a book. They all look nervous, except Tyler. He runs in, grabs my hand, and says, "Gran, can we make cookies later?" Melanie flinches at the word, but I don't. I nod. Of course, baby. After lunch, Sophie gives me a small smile. I brought you something. She hands me a drawing. Me in my chair, reading a book. Sunflowers in the background. You remembered the garden, I say, voice catching. I like it better here, she says. It's calmer. I know what she means, and I don't push it. Lunch is warm, the kind where nobody brings up past fights, but everyone knows they're sitting in the aftermath. We talk about school, books, weather, baking. Not once do we mention Craig. Afterward, Tyler and I make cookies, oatmeal, chocolate chip, just like we used to. Melanie watches us from the doorway. I catch her eyes more than once, full of something I can't name. Maybe guilt, maybe awe, or maybe it's her finally seeing me not just as her mother, but as a person. Later that week, Melanie texts me again. Would you be okay with me giving a talk at my women's group about what I learned from this? I don't hesitate. Yes. As long as you're honest, she replies. I will be. This time, I really see you. And she does. Because 3 days later, I get tagged in a post online. A picture of Melanie standing at a podium, speaking into a mic. Caption: My mother took back her home, her name, and her peace. She taught me the difference between caretaking and control. I hope to pass that wisdom on. I stare at the photo for a long time. Not because I need her validation, but because I never thought I'd see her unlearn what she thought was love. And yet here we are. A week later, a lawyer emails me. Apparently someone from the podcast reached out and wants to help set up a nonprofit fund in my name. The Privacy Power Project for older adults facing neglect or erasure in their homes. The idea stuns me. I'm not famous, I tell the lawyer. No, he says, but you're powerful. Those words ring in my ears for days. Because he's right. I didn't set out to become anything. Not an advocate. Not an internet story. I just wanted a door. But now I want doors for everyone who's been told they don't deserve one. That night, I walk through my house slowly, touching each frame, each wall, each restored hinge. It's like touching memory itself. Then I sit down at my desk and open the photo album Melanie brought. I add a new picture to the final page. It's not an old one. It's from the lunch we just had. Me, Melanie, Tyler, and Sophie, all standing in the backyard. Sunflowers behind us. I look tired, but whole. I write beneath it. Rebuilt, not replaced. Then I close the album, because this time, I'm the one choosing what belongs. There's a quiet kind of victory no one sees, not a standing ovation, not a trophy, just silence. The kind that fills a house like soft music, echoing peace back at you. No footsteps stomping down the hall, no doors flung open without knocking, no voices shouting your name like you owe them something. Just me, in my home, with the doors I chose, the walls I reclaimed, and the nameplate I had re-engraved on the mailbox. Margaret Ruth Holloway, no guest, no in-law suite. Just me. I used to think dignity was something you earned by staying quiet, making do, keeping peace at your own expense. But I was wrong. Dignity is choosing yourself, even if it means walking away from people who built their comfort on your silence. And dignity, as it turns out, looks a lot like lavender and polished wood and soft locks clicking shut at night. Melanie still visits sometimes, not often, and never unannounced. She texts first, asks, "Would you like company?" instead of assuming I'm lonely. Funny how respect isn't that hard, it just has to be real. Sophie and Tyler love it here. They say the house feels like a hug. They help me in the garden. We bake cookies every visit, and they've started calling the guest room the reading room. Because we sit in there, surrounded by books and cushions, telling stories from when I was young. "Did you really bike to school in the snow?" Tyler asks one afternoon. I grin. Only uphill. Both ways. He laughs like it's the best thing he's ever heard. Melanie watches us from the doorway. Sometimes teary-eyed, sometimes smiling. I think she knows what she almost lost. But she doesn't push, and I don't lecture. That's the new balance we've found. Meanwhile, something else is growing beyond this home. The Privacy and Power Project is officially registered. A team of younger women lawyers, volunteers, journalists, help run the day-to-day. But they say I'm the heart of it. They've started hosting workshops in community centers, creating resources for older adults whose families try to erase their space, their identity, their needs. They even asked me to do a TEDx talk. Just speak from your experience. The organizer said, "That's all we need." So I did. I walked out in a lavender blouse, standing tall, and I told the story of the doors, of the time my daughter said, "You don't need privacy," of how I took the doors off the hinges, then took back the D, and when I ended with "Never forget. Peace is a room with a lock, and your name on the title." The room stood up, clapped, cheered. Some people cried. A week later, the talk went viral. Over 2 million views. I got letters from women in Florida, Arizona, Minnesota, emails from daughters, granddaughters, nieces. Some apologizing, some promising to do better. And one message I'll never forget, from a woman in her late 70s. "They kept calling me a burden. I heard your story and moved into my own apartment. I hung a sign on my door that says 'Queen of this castle.' Thank you." That night, I stood in my kitchen, barefoot, holding a cup of tea, and I wept, not because I was sad, but because somewhere out there, another woman finally closed her own door and felt safe. That's when I knew this wasn't just my story, it was ours. It was every woman who'd ever been told she didn't matter because she got older. Every woman whose name was written in small print while others made big decisions. Every woman who cooked, cleaned, raised families, held everyone together, and got labeled extra when all was said and done. We aren't extra. We're everything. Now sometimes I visit those same community centers. I walk in, slow but strong, and sit in a circle of women wearing soft sweaters, reading glasses, and knowing eyes. We talk about sons who stopped calling, daughters who moved them in but never made them feel at home, spouses who passed away and left a silence too deep to explain. And I tell them, start with one door, just one. Put your name back on something. They nod, because they get it, and little by little the patchwork of our strength grows wider. One day Melanie brings me something, an old box, brown leather, brass latch, faded corners. I found this in the attic, she says, placing it gently on my kitchen table. It's yours. I thought Craig got rid of it. I open the box slowly. Inside, my mother's letters, dozens of them, yellowed paper, blue ink, signed with her looping script. I haven't seen these since the old house. I read the first one aloud. Maggie, never shrink yourself fit inside someone else's version of you. I look up at Melanie. She's crying. I'm so sorry, Mom, she says, voice cracking. For all of it. I reach for her hand, because this part isn't about revenge anymore. This part is about release. I forgive you, I say softly, because I finally forgave myself. We sit like that for a while, mother and daughter, older and wiser. Not perfect, not fixed, but healing. That night, I add one last plaque to the front of the house. It's small, wood carved, and hangs beside the doorbell. It says this home has boundaries and a backbone, because it does, and I'm proud of that.